Did you see that? Look closely. That right there is wheel hop. It's not good for burnouts. Fortunately, there's a way to fix it. We need to replace the rear control arms to solve the wheel hop. Wheel hop happens because of worn rubber bushings in the control arms. Rubber is great for comfort, but as it deteriorates, it creates more play. During a burnout, this allows the wheel to gain traction, try to push forward, and jump up as the only way to go. This quick cycle causes a hopping effect. Shaky shaky equals breaky breaky.
So basically we have instructions. Ooh, sticker. That's better than peanuts. And then we have our lower control arms. Fully adjustable on both ends. These little parts here are just all the bushings for the bolts, but this is the big important part. I guess while we're at it, we can replace the upper rear control arm and the bushing as well.
Raise the rear of the vehicle. Lower the rear axle, but don't let it hang. Once the control arms are removed, the axle will move around freely. Keep the jack underneath the differential to help with movement. Disconnect the parking brake cable by pulling the end up and out of the bracket. Then remove the lower clip holding it to the housing. Feed the cable back through the hole in the control arm. Remove the front and rear bolt on the control arm and remove it from the mounts. With the control arms out, we can see exactly what was causing the wheel hop. All that cracking and deforming was allowing too much play in the system. The new control arms need to be preset to the length of the factory control arms. Spin both ends out evenly, keeping the body of the control arm centered. I used the bolts as alignment pins once the length was set. Snug down the locking nuts. One of the bolt bushings is longer than the others. The mounts on the Mustang are not in line with each other, so the control arm has to be offset to ride straight. The offset bushing goes into the rear mount facing inside. Reinstall the control arm bolts and double check the locking nuts. Don't forget to reinstall the parking brake cable. A zip tie can be used to secure the cable to the side of the control arm. Okay, on to the upper control arm. The control arm bolts have nuts that need to be counter-held. Again, support the front of the differential with a floor jack or jack stand. Once the upper control arm is out, the whole axle will want to rotate. I apologize in advance for the camera work on this part. There's not much space to see. At some points my head and the camera had to occupy the same space. It doesn't work very well. The mount bolts will have to be removed to give enough clearance for the removal of the front arm bolt. There are two on the rear of the mount and one inside the cabin under the rear seats. Removing the rear seat base is as simple as pressing in the plastic tab on each side and pulling straight up. Then the seat will pull forward and be able to be removed. Then remove the bolt for the mount. Now the front arm bolt can be removed and the whole control arm removed. This is the worst bushing I found. Should have been replaced before last race week. Anyway, here's the new control arm. The poly bushing in front is stronger and deflects less than the rubber. Should stiffen up nicely. Reinstall everything in reverse order. Don't forget the grease fitting for the front poly bushing. But what about the differential bushing? These bushings are pressed in from the factory. The new poly bushing will use the existing housing, so we have to separate the rubber from the housing. The simplest way to remove it is with a hole saw. Keep it as straight as possible to prevent damage to the housing. Depending on how deep your hole saw is, you may have to drill from both sides. The bushing should slide right out after that. There will be leftover rubber material that needs to be cleaned out before installing the poly bushing. A wire wheel does this job quite well. Put some grease on the new bushing before installing. Putting the bushing in the freezer for a half hour beforehand will make installing easier. Depending on how clean the housing is, a C-clamp may also be needed to press the bushing in. I apologize for not having any footage of the install. Moment of truth.